Alex Answer here. It's been a while since I've talked about emergency preparedness. I've been spending a lot of time covering the news, and there's a lot of news that's taking place right now. You have the Olympics and all the symbolism taking place there. You have Russia and the United States. Tensions actually are increasing, even though it's not fully being reported in the press. In fact, there's another story about a Russian naval base that's going to be set up in Cuba. There's also military agreements between China and Mexico also taking place. You have the BRICS that's being built right now, and you have the dollar, which is not in a good state. Bernanke alluded to QE3 recently, and you have civil unrest increasing in Anaheim, California. We have the shooting recently, which has traumatized a lot of people, but they're using this to demonize the Second Amendment. And weeks before the shooting, the UN announced that they were talking about a UN arms treaty, and that is going on throughout the month of July. We saw the NATO meeting in Chicago not too long ago. Massive police brutality there, and we're also seeing massive protests in Russia as well. You look at Greece, major issues right there, and you look at countries like China, and they're seeing an increase in civil unrest as well. The tensions are increasing with the United States. I don't believe China represents the Chinese people. They're also a part of this control structure. And so it's important to see what's taking place with this by design shift of power to the east, and these tensions that are taking place that are increasing, which really don't need to happen. We're talking about a system of control that a lot of people don't fully understand. It's not just an Anglo-Saxon New World Order. We have a situation where high-tech weapons are being developed at the same time across the planet. And all these satellites are being launched now from China and Russia. And we have announcements about NASA being defunded and it becoming privatized. And then you have genetic engineering, what's going to happen to humanity, and then there's our health. So I want to return the conversation now to emergency preparedness, a realistic viewpoint on what I believe we're looking at. I interviewed Joel Skousen several years ago, and he talked about the geopolitical shift and the tensions and the weaponry that China's developing, their navy, and of course Russia. And he has written he's written a book called Strategic Relocation, and it's probably, I haven't read it yet, but I saw an interview with him recently where he's talking about this book, and it is full of charts and diagrams and detailed suggestions on realistically getting out of the danger zone. If there is a refugee situation, it could be a solar flare, it could be nuclear war, it could be civil unrest. The point is, you want to prepare ahead of time, and you want to be able to do it without fear. This is not really about a war with the government. He recommended that a lot of people go into hiding because the situation is going to be very, very dangerous. Now, we've seen a major increase in the amount of underground shelters that have been purchased over the course of the last couple of years. I believe that people instinctively know that we should work to become self-sufficient. That's why we're seeing a boom in the survival business. In fact, I helped open the Portland Preparedness Center in Portland, Oregon shortly before I left. That was a very interesting 5 months. And so I've gotten very much into the preparedness mindset. A couple years ago, I bought about 300 pounds of organic grains. And the fact of the matter is, it's not about a doomsday situation. It's about some sort of disruption to this way of life, civilization as we know it. So I'm going to start going into tips, the basic tips that you want to think about. I want you to set aside $300, $400 from your check, your income, over the course of the next couple months, and I recommend you get 3 months stored food, and you get a wide, diverse amount of food. Don't just take other people's advice on what you should get. Think about what your body needs and your body type. I would recommend green superfood. If there's a lack of vegetables, you can definitely use that nutrition. I would recommend a lot of dehydrated fruits. You're going to need that natural glucose for energy, and I would recommend quinoa. I would recommend a lot of healthy grains that you can buy in bulk. It's still very affordable. It's amazing that you can still buy stuff in bulk for as little as $1 or less. You can actually get organic wheat for about 59 cents. So even though we hear all these dramatic things about the poisons in the food and the poisons in the water, the fact of the matter is the dollar is still operating, and there still is time, and now there's a massive abundance of information as to how to simply get prepared. And I've interviewed about 10 people on emergency preparedness, but you need to get a variety of things. It's not just about the bug out bag. Water filters are very important. In fact, there's certain water filters that can pull moisture out of the air, and that's very important if you're in an area where there's not a lot of water, or there's a drought, or it's dangerous to go outside. These particular water filters can pull moisture from the air even inside. I would look at stoves, butane stoves, because butane can burn without getting you sick, causing you to get sick. You don't want to be burning and cooking with propane inside. So you need a variety of that. I would definitely get some spices. You never know when you're going to need that. And containers. Fill your car up with several months of a food supply, not just Mountain House. And that actually has MSG in it. I don't recommend it. But a variety of foods. There's also canned meats you can look at. In terms of self-defense, I would start learning how to defend yourself and look at it from a non-MMA point of view, and don't be angry when you train, and don't think that this is based in fear. Um, there's an art form to martial arts. I've been started training when I was 13 years old. I don't talk about it that much, but there is a spiritual connection that many people tap into when they are activating their chi, when they are being powerful, when they are pushing their body to the max. It does create a certain flow and focus for the mind. I also recommend meditation, staying calm, and getting the practice of that, because you don't want to panic in a emergency situation. There's a lot of advice on your grab and go bag, from having a compass to having string, rope, to having plastic bags, to having a poncho. Rain gear is very important. Also thermal wear. Think about a solar powered flashlight. Think about MREs. Think about a variety of knives. K-Bar is a great brand. In fact, I've met a lot of survivalists that recommend that as the top knife. Number one in quality. Some are made in Taiwan, some are made in China. I'm not sure the difference in the quality of the steel, but if you oil it and you take care of it, that can last you a very long time, and you can do a lot of things with it. I recommend a BB gun. If you need to shoot a bird, heaven forbid, hopefully it won't get to that point, but I'd rather do that than eat a human. And there are certain threats like that I believe will be coming in areas where everything's cut off. Oil's not moving, food's not shipping back and forth. I look at Dallas, and sometimes I believe see that there's not enough grocery stores, but there's a lot of restaurants, but they don't necessarily have a food supply that's going to last more than a couple days to a couple weeks. In a disaster, it's likely that these places will be looted. And then when you look at civil unrest, we're seeing an increase in flash mobs, stealing. So being able to prepare and defend yourself and defend others is a very critical skill to have. Now, moving on to community, we live in a world of boxes where a lot of people live separate lives. And I think that's about to change, even relationships, as we realize we need each other, and as we see more police get laid off, we're going to see more criminals taking advantage of the situation. I'm all for the Second Amendment, because we're going to have to defend ourselves from some of the criminals that go rogue and are involved in rape and human trafficking, and unfortunately that is what happens when we go through an economic collapse. There's been a major increase in females that are stripping, and I'm not being a prude, I'm not being judgmental, but there's a lot of people that don't want to be doing that, and that is the truth. So when you're looking at emergency preparedness and regions, you want to look at areas where there's not going to be a massive exit of refugees, and Joel Skousen was making this point very clear. You want to be away from sight. And when I think about a retreat, I think about a number of things. First of all, I think about getting that retreat with a fake name and a fake credit card, and developing some sort of another identification, and even changing your name if need be. And I would also look at getting a place that's heavily covered by trees, so it's camouflaged from things, the aircraft that's flying over. And I would look at burying things, a cache of certain self-defense items, and also food. I would definitely work with a group on building a tunnel outside of a home, and that leads to somewhere else. Underground shelter, and there's also ways that you can build underground shelters. There's a book called the $50 and Up Underground Shelter book, and you can do a number of things. I would also recommend being in an area of a higher elevation, at least 200 feet, in case there's a major flood, especially if you're on the coastline. And of course, there's a threat of earthquakes, and so a secure building that's not going to collapse is very, very important. It's also important that when you set up a group, that you don't have one person becoming a dictator, although you do need certain people to be in leadership positions. But most of all, you need to have skills if you're working as a team, and I would work with a number of people that have different skills to bring to the table instead of just a bunch of people that are preparing for a revolution. That's not going to be good. If you have a lot of angry people together, they could end up turning on themselves, and I think that is certainly in the cards. Men at times do certainly act irrational when put under pressure. So I would look at having a doctor, someone that knows how to stitch, someone that knows how to deal with gun wounds. I would definitely have a lot of painkillers on hand, not for recreational use, but when they're needed in a emergency, scalpels, and also dental tools. You also probably want to have a constitutionalist or a lawyer, someone that knows the law. If in case something goes wrong, you can have someone speaking on your behalf. And speaking on behalf of the Constitution, I would have a great cook. I would have someone that knows how to build things. In fact, two people. I would have people that are trained in being able to defend themselves against looters and perhaps any other thing that could manifest and come to fruition. You might want to have some extra clothes. If you have children, have some extra clothes that you expect them to grow into. And so think about this from a wider perspective than being afraid. As far as solar flares are concerned, we could see massive damage to our electric grid, and there's different debates on whether it could affect all electronics. Some say yes, some say no. Be prepared anyway, and have a lot of things buried in the ground that may be able to withstand that burst of radiation. I would also consider solar power generators. I would also have a mechanic that's involved in the group, someone that knows how to take out moving parts from a car and perhaps turn that into something else that could generate energy. If you have the ability to locate somewhere that's near a well, you really want to think about doing something like that. Um, and have a variety of water filters for the backpack, and also something like a Berkey, but also know how to make a water filter yourself. And there's a number of ways you can do that with buckets. There's a lot of information online. Moving on to other things, you want to have tools like shovels. You want to have a lot of garden seeds. I would go for about 100,000, of course, all heirloom seeds. And even if you have some other seeds, sometimes they grow better. In an emergency, you may need to turn to other seeds in order to guarantee that you're going to eat. And in a crisis situation, a little genetically modified food isn't going to hurt you because we're already eating it. And I believe to a certain degree, some of us are adapting to it, although I do believe it's altering humanity and a part of a eugenics operation. But the world elite is preparing for what's to come. They're building underground bunkers. FEMA's activated, and they have 10 regions in the U.S. And when it all goes down, if it goes down, they're going to be running the country, the shadow government, from these locations. Colorado may be a safe place to go. Certain parts of it, west of it, but you don't want to be near Denver. You don't want to be near Cheyenne Mountain. You don't want to be near anywhere that's near a military base that could be a target. Population zones are definitely no-nos. And there's also different debates on if a solar flare could disrupt nuclear power plants. And I've heard it said by Matthew Stein, author of When Technology Fails, that there's only enough fuel for 1 week, and he's done a lot of research in this, so I would take a look at that. And Congress hasn't mandated, even with Fukushima happening, that they have more fuel than a week. So in a major disaster, you could see major meltdowns. So back to other things that you want to have in a crisis like that. You want to have colloidal silver and a colloidal silver generator, and multiple generators with several barrels of gasoline, perfectly buried. You also want to have some gold, but most especially silver. Silver has many practical purposes as well, other than currency, and silver is likely to skyrocket. You can even go a step further if you have money. I would start buying things in different denominations, the won, the euro. I would definitely expand the portfolio. Hell, buy some pesos, but buy some